About 18 years ago, I started a new job as a technical trainer at the National Science Foundation in Arlington. I went from supporting about 90 users at my previous job to 1,500 at NSF. And since just about everyone had to take one of my classes at some time or another, I became something of a celebrity at NSF. Wherever I went in the building, clients would recognize me and say my name and just generally go all fanboy on me. A couple of times, some of the more enthusiastic fangirls followed me into the ladies' room to tell me how much they had enjoyed my PowerPoint class. And that was creepy. But I had some lingering self-esteem issues from being bullied as a kid, so I had to admit that being treated like a rock star at work was pretty darn awesome. On the other hand, having 1,500 people call me by name triggered one of my biggest pet peeves. Now, I don't just have pet peeves, I hoard them. And most of them have to do with people who are dismissive or oblivious of the world around them. You know the ones. They get in the passing lane and go exactly the speed limit, or they block the aisle with their grocery cart while they have an extended text conversation with their bae. They suck. But at least they're only taking a piece of my time. The ones who really burn me are the ones who take a piece of my identity. Now, I don't mean identity thieves, although they suck too. I'm talking about automatic nicknamers. You know, the ones when I introduce myself, "Hi, I'm Sandra," they say, "Nice to meet you, Sandy." Great, we've only just met, and now I have to make a decision. Do I go pedantic, it's Sandra, or do I let it slide and be forever and always known to that person as Sandy? Now, there's not a thing at all wrong with being a Sandy. For example, at NSF, the secretary of my division, Information Services, was a Sandy. And she was great. She was laid back and she was perpetually cheerful. She had this really great sunny smile, too. If her job had been as public-facing as mine was, she would have been treated like a rock star, too. That's how great she was. And she wore her nickname like it was a comfortable pair of slippers. I admired that, because I had once been a Sandy too. It says Sandra on my birth certificate, but my whole family goes by nickname versions of their given names. We're an informal people. But my nickname never felt comfortable. It never fit right. It always felt like I was wearing someone else's shoes. And it didn't help that when I was in kindergarten, my classmates called me Sandy Koufax, after a baseball player who was in the headlines a lot that fall. And they taunt me for having a boy's name. Sometimes, though, they'd change it up and call me San Diego, which was weird, being called a city, but it was miles better than being called a boy. And at home, my informal family gave my nickname a nickname and called me Sandy Wandy. At the tender age of 5, I had begun to hate my silly willy boy-sounding name. But then when I was 10, I read a short story in 17 magazine that changed everything. It featured a young woman named Sandy, but spelled with an I instead of a Y. I know, an I. How cool was that? And it was so feminine. Sandy Koufax didn't spell his name with an I. So I adopted that spelling immediately, and that helped me be a little more comfortable in my name, at least throughout my teen years. But as a young adult, being a Sandy with an I became a liability for me. My cutesy name with the cutesy spelling was kind of like having my feet bound. It constricted my development. No matter what my chronological age was, I always felt like I was a kid at the adults' table. I didn't quite fit in, my feet didn't touch the ground, and I wasn't taken seriously. For example, in college one year, I had been part of a dancing Chinese dragon in the homecoming parade, you know, the canopy and the dragon head and all the feet. And 6 months later, when the yearbook came out, there was a picture of the dragon, and it was focused on my legs sticking out from underneath the dragon canopy. I knew they were my legs, and so did everyone else, because also sticking out under the canopy was my high school jacket. And clearly visible in the picture were the letters S-A-N-D-I in bright red felt letters. I saw the humor in the picture, but I was mortified to be the butt of it. And as a Sandy with an I, every time I spelled my name for people in a business situation, I might as well have just said that my name was Princess Snowflake Kitten Snuggler. Because what I got in return was amusement and thinly veiled condescension. Now, I have to point out that nowadays I have several female friends, grown women, who go by nicknames that end in I. And each and every one of those women completely and utterly owns her I. Good for them. But not me, not back then. My I owned me, and it was time for a change. So just a few years before I started at NSF, I finally decided to kick off my Sandy sneakers, and I began to call myself Sandra. Took a little getting used to, but once I broke in my new adult name, the benefit was undeniable. This may sound corny, but I walked a little taller, and I was taken seriously. And for the first time in like ever, I was comfortable with my identity. I liked my name, and I liked who I was. The only downside to this was those pesky automatic nicknamers. And NSF was rife with them. Rife, I tell you. All of the client fanboys who greeted me in the hallway would say, "Hey, Sandy, how's it going?" Or, "Hey, got any Excel tips for me, Sandy?" First, I thought they were being dismissive or disingenuous, because NSF has some pretty smart people. And the government ID on my lanyard and the nameplate on my office door clearly said Sandra. But their affection and their admiration seemed genuine enough. And eventually, it occurred to me that they liked me. They really, really liked me. I didn't realize how much, though, until I came back to work after a week's vacation. On that first Monday morning back, I had just sat down in my office when a client walked by. She saw me and kind of did a double take, and then she burst into tears. She hugged me. "I'm so happy to see you." "Thanks, it's great to be back." A few minutes later, another client came by and did the same thing. And then another. Tears, hug. "I'm so happy to see you." Geez, people, I'd only been away for a week, and I didn't even bring you anything. What was going on? When my fellow trainer arrived, she gave me some insight. On the weekend before my vacation started, Sandy, the Information Services Division Secretary with the sunny smile, had died suddenly. And when word spread throughout NSF that Sandy from Information Services had died, and my office was dark all week, and I was nowhere to be seen, they jumped to the inevitable, if erroneous, conclusion. I had spent a week dead and didn't even know it. But I was too touched to be too annoyed at the name mix-up. Seeing people actually cry because they were so happy to see me alive made me realize that my identity was more than just my name, and more than how I spelled my name. I still hate being called Sandy, but I love being liked for who I am. Thank you.